Just started recording for anyone who has joined. Great to see those numbers ticking up. Okay, we might kick off. It's 1:03. I feel really honoured to be here today. And this is a really special day to celebrate September and Are You OK Day. We are going to be exploring some themes around mental health. So if anything in today's call brings up feelings or triggers for you, please know that there's always help available and there is always someone who actually wants to listen to you. So my lovely colleague Jill is going to post the number for Lifeline in the chat. And then perhaps, thank you, Jill, perhaps after this call, we can also just check in on each other and continue the conversation. So I'm joined by some incredible people who I will introduce to you shortly. And if you'd like to see us all on the same screen, I did try to do this myself, but if you go to the view button in the top right-hand corner and click gallery, you should be able to see everyone all together or whatever works for you. I want to start today's session by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the lands we're dialing in from and the vast number of cultures, languages, and the history that has existed tens of thousands of years before Australia was colonised. For anyone who's just joined, please just be aware we are recording the session. I'd also like to read a quote I read from Reconciliation Australia this morning, which I thought was quite meaningful, particularly with the subject we're talking about. So it goes, "When we talk about traditional country, we mean something beyond the dictionary definition of the word. We might mean homeland or tribal clan or area, and we might mean more than just a place on the map. For us, country is a word for all the values, places, resources, stories, and cultural obligations associated with that area and its features. It describes the entirety of our ancestral domains. While they may all no longer necessarily be title holders to the land, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Australians are still connected to the country of their ancestors, and most consider themselves to be custodians or caretakers of their land. So I pay my respects to country and all that means, and to elders past, present, and emerging." 227 people on the call now and climbing, very exciting. And I'm sure you've all been stepping it up and hopefully enjoying the first 12 days of your month of moving. For those of you who are new to STEPtember, I just want to touch on why we do the challenge and why we have been doing it for the past 13, now 14 years. Obviously, it's a really great way to start your spring, to boost your activity, to get connected with your colleagues, your teams. But it's also our largest annual fundraiser, and it enables us to help babies, children, and adults with cerebral palsy live more independent and also pain-free lives. I think it surprises a lot of people to learn that cerebral palsy, or CP as we call it, is actually the most common physical disability in Australian children. And a child is diagnosed every 20 hours. So your support will help us provide services like early intervention treatment, something we call babies at risk. And to give you an impact of what that early intervention treatment does, I know of so many families, and my colleagues do, who were told that their children may never be able to walk, talk, or independently feed themselves. And thanks to this therapy, they are doing just that. So that's a really powerful impact to have, and to give someone the ability to communicate to their family. Like, that's huge, and that has such incredible knock-on effects. So I just want to applaud all 248 now of you for joining STEPtember, for chipping in what you can, and for helping us to enable people with cerebral palsy to more fully participate in their lives. So thank you so much. And of course, it's Are You OK Day? Yay. I know that everyone on this call will have their own story about mental well-being, maybe the challenges when it comes to mental health. I definitely have my own as well. What you might not know is how much more it can affect people with disabilities. So it's estimated that 1 in 3 people with a disability will experience at least one mental health condition. And today we're going to be diving in and exploring this topic. What are some of the misconceptions we have about people who experience mental health conditions or symptoms? Are we afraid to ask, are you okay? And what happens after that? So here to share the stories and help us unpack some of this, I'm incredibly honoured to introduce our panellists. We're very fortunate to have Seryn Adams join us today. Seryn is an Are You OK ambassador and Suicide Prevention Officer at the Murrumbidgee Primary Health Network. And in 2022, she was recognised in her local electorate as Woman of the Year for her outstanding work in suicide prevention. So round of applause to you, Seryn. I'm sure everyone's joining me in doing that. We also have the wonderful Georgia Mascarenhas here with us today. Georgia is a mental health advocate and founder of YANA Club, which stands for You Are Not Alone, which I just love. We're also really lucky that Georgia is part of our STEPtember campaigns team and is a huge part of why STEPtember is so successful. So thank you so much for lending us your time today, Georgia. Oh, gosh. It's very exciting. I also want to extend a special welcome to Meret Hassan, who's joining us. Unfortunately, Sophie had to pull out at the last minute. However, I've been really lucky to work with Meret for several years, and I'm really thrilled that she could step in. She always has such a unique perspective. Meret is a Sydney-based filmmaker who also has cerebral palsy. She's worked on a number of independent films and broadcast programs. She's currently developing her own scripted portfolio. And she's also helped oversee an internship program, which created 30 paid positions for creators with disability. So huge advocate for the disabled community. And thank you so much for joining us, Meret. So, this is really exciting. We're going to jump straight in. Seryn, I think I'll start with you. Thank you again so much for joining us. You've done some incredible work in supporting people with mental health challenges and illnesses, and no doubt you've actually saved many lives as a result of that. Can you tell us a bit about your story and what drew you to working as a suicide prevention officer?
Thanks so much, Ashely. It's such a pleasure to be joining you all today on such a momentous day that is Are You OK Day. And the theme this year is that Are You OK Day is any day. So not just waiting until this one day a year to ask the question, but remembering that life happens every day. We all have life's ups and downs. So we recognise it today as our special day of the year, but just a reminder that it can be any day to ask the question. As you mentioned, I work now in suicide prevention, and it's been my passion in my career and in my life for about 7 years now. I've been an Are You OK ambassador for 5+ years and really enjoy working with the Are You OK team and the rest of the ambassadors. As someone who has experienced suicidality throughout my life, I guess that's what drew me into the suicide prevention space. So about 10 years ago, I moved about 7 hours away from home. I was 19 years old. I didn't have too many supports around me at that point in time, and things were just starting to get bad for me. I was really struggling. I didn't have any friends. My family were back in Sydney quite some time away, and my relationship was less than ideal is how I phrase it, and we'll leave it at that because, that's the diplomatic way to put it. But I really just wasn't myself, and I have a very close relationship with my mum. I'm very lucky. And we speak almost every day, pretty much every day. And at that time, I just wasn't answering her phone calls and I wasn't responding to her text messages. And she sort of recognized that stuff was going on. And she had asked me quite a few times, what's going on? And I sort of just covered it up because, you never want to make the people around you worry. Until one day, I just couldn't get out of bed. And the thought of not being able to get out of bed, particularly for someone who's able-bodied, it's something that's foreign to many people. But what I was going through meant that I was just really struggling. Mum rang me and I answered, and she said, "Are you okay? Please tell me what's going on." And I said, "No, I'm really not okay, Mum. I've been thinking about suicide." And I had been for quite some time. And finally, I took that opportunity to open up to her and tell her. And I always laugh at this point in the story because Mum says, "Oh, okay, I'll ring you back in a minute." And she hangs up the phone. Now, that is not what I recommend to do if someone just tells you that they've been thinking about suicide. But obviously, Mum was quite taken aback. She did ring me back in a couple of minutes, and what she'd been able to do was actually get onto a psychologist in the town that I was living, and she got them to see me. Now, many of you will know it's very challenging to get into a psychologist. It's not a same day type of a service, but obviously she in some form or another convince them that I really needed that support. So she rang me back. She said, will you go and see these people? And I said, yes. The appointment was in a couple of hours' time. And she stayed on the phone to me for those few hours. She talked me through some really practical steps. She said, have you had a shower? I said, no. So, she said, well, go and have a shower. I said, okay, I'll do that. I'll ring you back. She said, oh, no, just put me on the basin. I'll stay on the phone. So I have my shower, and then she says, oh, just put on some tracksuit pants, and have you eaten? I said, oh, no, I haven't eaten. And in actual fact, I hadn't eaten anything substantial in quite some time, weeks at this point. So she said, well, just make yourself some toast, which I did. And she stayed on the phone for that 2 hours, and I kept trying to get her off the phone, but it really wasn't until I was walking into the office of that psychologist and she felt comfortable that I was safe. And it was those really practical steps, keeping me on the phone, just being there to support me in that time. It was follow on from that. I moved back home, got the support that I needed. But I do say that she certainly saved my life on that day, because for days, weeks, months, I was thinking about suicide every day. So that's a little bit about my story and how I came to be an Are You OK ambassador, and the power of asking that question.
Yeah, and I also just want to recognize the power of sharing your story, and the courage that takes. I don't think everyone, it's hard to talk about your personal life and talk about those things. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. And I know that, storytelling is how we change the narrative, and it's so great to hear those practical steps that your mum took. Like, I just wrote that down, like the support, like going through the normal everyday emotions. Sometimes I think we get overwhelmed. It's like, what do I do if someone does say that? What do I do if they say they've had suicidal thoughts or they're not doing well? And you kind of, maybe don't hang up the phone, but as you said. But
yeah, I don't recommend that. She has since learned, and she's now a support worker. So she's learned a lot in the past 10 years. But
that's such a useful tool to people, even, the first few minutes of our call to walk away with. It's like, okay, well, where are you? And can you make some toast? Can you make a cup of tea? I'll stay on the phone. Like, I just think that's such a wonderful story and piece of advice to share. So thank you so much for that, Seryn. Meret, I have loved working with you over the past few years. I know you offer such a unique perspective to any conversation you join. Can you first tell us a little bit about, like, we're talking about mental health, we're also talking about disability. Can you first tell us a bit about your cerebral palsy and how it came to be?
I was born with a lack of oxygen to the left side of my brain, which means the right side of my body is affected with cerebral palsy, and also my speech is mildly affected, and I've been a client on the CPA since I was 8 months old.
Sorry, I muted myself. And I mentioned earlier how mental health issues or illnesses can affect people with disabilities more than those without. As a person with CP, can you tell us a bit about how that might have affected your mental health or any challenges that you've been through?
I think it can be such quite simple things like, people not really understanding maybe how CP prevents and presents, and making assumptions that aren't maybe accurate. I used to get really, really bothered when I'd be talking on the phone and people would like continually ask me if I was okay, which is what today's all about. but they asked me like 3 or 4 times in the space of a 10-minute phone call, and I've that used to quite bother me quite a lot, but now I'm at a stage where I just say I've got a slight speech impairment. I'm fine. You need to, like, I'm fine.
Yeah.
You don't need to worry.
And do you find that resolves it? Do you find that they then...
Yes, it does. And they're normally quite apologetic by that point.
Yeah.
But I suppose it is nice to be asked as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you touched on that topic of assumptions, right? And we assume so much about a person from how they look and how they present themselves, and that can go both ways. Like someone can be presenting themselves as confident and completely fine, and then actually behind the scenes that's not the case. And we've seen that so many times in the media where people think someone is a TV presenter or a media personality, but then the tragedy happens and all of a sudden we learn a bit more. So, and just from what you're saying, Meret, around assumptions that people have just based on the way you talk, the way you look, it's a really good reminder for everyone dialing in. Just please don't make those assumptions, or please look beyond what's happening on the surface and remember that there's a whole story. Just like you have your whole story personally, that other person has a whole story that they're going through and have gone through. So thank you so much for sharing that. Georgia, thank you for joining us today. We're really lucky to have someone with your experience on our STEPtember team, because we have, it's been really incredible myself learning about your own experience, and I've really enjoyed that. Can you tell us a bit about why you think sharing your story is so valuable and how you did that personally?
I certainly can. Thank you for having me, and a big hello to everyone, and thank you so much for joining. I love being a part of the STEPtember team, and it's been so good working as part of CPA and meeting all our amazing clients and ambassadors and everyone around us who we get to work with. But prior to, I did have a business called YANA Club, and I still do run that on the side, but not as, I guess, frequently. And YANA Club, as Ash touched on before, stands for You Are Not Alone. And at the end of the day, that's my only mission, is to share my story so that people and others feel less alone with what they might be experiencing and take away the shame and the guilt and the embarrassment of it all. Because I suppose over my time, I've realized we're all going through something. And whether that's a disability like CP or whether that's a mental illness or whatever it might be, just being open about it invites others to do the same. And that's the power of sharing your experiences. So I had a personal training business before where I was training clients. I then made it a lot of more focus on mental health and mental well-being and training to feel a certain way instead of looking a certain way, because that's all that was being blasted on Instagram and everything at the time. And I wasn't responding well to that, and I knew that others weren't either. And I have been very open about my struggles with mental illness over the years. But what I discovered was the more open I was, that the more open my clients would be with me.
Yeah,
I will share a very quick story, if that's okay.
Yes.
Was I guess when it really came down to it, and I realized what I was doing was important. Was one day I was walking to work a few years ago, and there was a man in the car who beeped at me when I was walking, and I was a bit taken off guard. I thought, oh my goodness, who's this? But I realized it was a member of our gym, and because I was always at the gym, I knew a lot of members. Anyway, I went over to say hello, thinking he was just trying to say hi. But he was having the most severe panic attack I've ever seen. He was in the car shaking, and he was quite a young man, very kind of cool, bit of a party animal, but doesn't really matter. But anyway, he was in the car having a really, really severe panic attack. I sort of snapped into gear and I jumped into the passenger seat and I held him for a little bit to calm him down. Once he eventually got a bit calmer, he revealed to me that he had taken a bunch of pills the night before to try to take his life. When I heard this, I was very taken back again, tried to encourage him to go to the hospital with me, and that was so we could get him checked out. He was on his way to work. He refused for a little bit, and after a bit of back and forth, we eventually got to the hospital. When we were at the hospital, I was there with him, and I thought, this is a bit bizarre. I know him from the gym, but I guess I'm not the closest person to him. So I asked him if he would like me to call someone from his family or a friend or something that could maybe come and support him. He was very adamant that he didn't want anyone else to be there and didn't want anyone to know about it. He goes, "Oh, I'm fine now," which I thought was a bit strange in a way. After some time, I asked him why he stopped me and why did he beep for me to help him. And he said that the only reason he stopped me was because he felt safe with me and that he knew I would understand and that he felt that I would know how to help him. So I felt very privileged to be in that position, but also knew there was something missing if I was the person he was able to stop, where he didn't feel comfortable to talk to any other friends or family. I knew there was still work to be done, I suppose. So that's why I'm a big advocate still, because it was just me sharing online where I didn't know he was watching, but it saved him in that instance. So I feel very lucky to have been there in the right time.
Yeah, wow. Thank you so much for sharing that, Georgia. That's incredibly powerful. And it's just so wonderful that you had been sharing your stories, and you just never know the impact that's going to have, right? And you were able to see firsthand the impact that YANA Club and the advocacy that you had been giving or participating in actually had. So honestly, bravo. I'm sure everyone has having the same reaction as I am now, which is like, restart YANA.
I
We
will
must
have
keep
to get
doing
it back
this.
up and running.
You can
I
find
will.
YANA on Instagram. What's the handle, Georgia?
It's at YANA Club,
At YANA Club.
YANA Club. I can post
Wonderful.
it in our
So
chat after.
great. So
Thank you.
yeah, of course, you've obviously had a really big impact sharing your stories. It actually reminds me, about a week ago, I was driving back home, and I'm quite heavily pregnant at the moment, and so I'm quite tired all the time. And I'd stopped at a traffic light, and I was just going like this, like I won't do it now because I've got mascara on, but I was just sort of like rubbing my eyes and had my head down. And I turned to my right, and there was a woman in the car who had wound her window down, and she was looking at me, and she went, "Are you okay?" And I just went, oh my gosh. And I wound my window down. I was like, yes, thank you so much. I'm just really pregnant and really tired, but thank you so much for checking in. And she's like, oh, I just wanted to make sure, you looked like you were crying. I just wanted to make sure you were okay. And I just thought, oh, that is so beautiful. Like, that was like, I had no idea who this person was. And she was just willing to touch base. And I'm sure if I had said, you know what, I'm really struggling, she would have been like, pull over, let's have a chat. So I just found that such a comforting moment to know that people are out there and looking out for each other. And yeah, just Georgia, the fact that you went over and were able to support that young man is really incredible. So bravo.
Thank you.
Sorry, so to pull up my notes because I got very distracted by the story. So Seryn, you know, Georgia's just told us about a really incredible experience where she asked if someone was okay. And obviously you've had your own experience of your mother asking if everyone was okay, if you were okay. How can we build more confidence to start these conversations? Like, how can we start to empower people more to just randomly check in on the car next to them even?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm that person who winds the window down or speaks to random people checking in if they're okay, because it is so important that we ask the question. And the reason it's so important is because when someone is really struggling, when they're thinking about taking their own life, they don't have the ability to reach out. It's very challenging for someone who's having suicidal thoughts to let someone know that they're struggling and to disclose that. A beeping of the horn, that would have taken such an effort for that young man who was in such a state of panic and distress that he had attempted to take his life. So it's so important that as the help giver, you are willing to ask that question, if you're recognizing signs in someone, we don't want people to get to the point of crisis or distress. We don't want them to get to that stage. So recognizing the signs early. If you say to your mate, "Oh, look, I haven't seen you at footy training lately, or I haven't seen you down the pub, or you haven't been replying to my messages. You're not as active on social media, or you're more active on social media. Maybe you're reaching out, looking for more connections." Those signs are so important to recognize that someone might be going through something, and picking up on those things early and checking in and asking the question. It's so, so important. At Are You Okay? We talk about the 4 steps being ALEC, ALEC, ask, listen without judgment, encourage action, and check in. 4 really easy steps. I love an acronym because it helps me, who has a really bad memory, know how to do it. And as long as you're genuine, caring, and authentic when approaching someone, we can all ask the question.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much, Seryn. You mentioned something about the signs, um, and someone's not showing up to footy, or they're maybe posting more on social media. Is there anything else, especially like we've got lots of different organisations joining across Australia today who are doing STEPtember? Is there anything you think, particularly in the workplace, we can maybe be on the lookout for, or just keep aware of?
Definitely. It's just life's events. A
Yeah,
relationship breakdown, financial stress, someone gets promoted and they're under more stress, someone gets demoted, whatever it may be. There's so many things that happen in our life that could cause stress, and there's never one single factor that leads people to the point of suicidality. There's always an accumulation of things. So if you've just noticed it, or if you know that people are going through different um, circumstances, if they're caring for someone with a disability, that can be a really stressful time. If they're caring for someone with an illness or cancer or whatever it may be, it's just life's events and they all pile up. So just being willing to say, "Look, I know that you're going through X, Y, and Z. I really want to be able to support you. How are you going?"
yeah, that's really nice. That's really powerful. Do you think some people are scared sometimes that they'll take on too much? Do you think, because I feel like that stops some people sometimes where they don't want to ask, "Are you okay?" because they know potentially there's a big answer behind the question. And I'm really diving in here. And like, how can we, make ourselves feel sort of less afraid that you're going to take on that issue? Because I
Yeah, for
think,
sure.
if I'm being really honest, sometimes like I think that maybe has stopped me in the past because I think I don't have the capacity to deal with what I know this could be. So I just remove myself. And I don't know if that's a terrible thing to say, but
No, it's honest, and it's so common because I think there's 2 factors to remember here. One is you don't have to be the person to ask the question.
yeah, right.
But if you can delegate. We're really
Yeah,
good at delegating things. If you recognize something in a friend or a colleague and you're not the best placed, that's okay. You may recognize something in a colleague and you don't really have a very close relationship with them, but you really do want to check in. They may not necessarily be open and upfront with you because they don't know you very well, and that's fair enough. But you may be able to speak with another colleague that they're quite close to and say, "I've noticed this about Joe. I'm really concerned. Do you think it's worth asking the question or just checking in?"
yeah,
So you don't have to be the one to take that on. You can go to someone else who may be more appropriate to ask that question. And it's also important that you, before asking the question, you're well within yourself. If it's not the right time for you, if you've got a lot of stuff going on, you don't want to add that extra stress to your life. But it is really appropriate to delegate that or have a conversation and get someone else to ask that question because that's really important. And the other part to this is that fear. And there is certainly a fear in what you're going to come up against, not knowing how to deal with the situation if they say that they're not okay. And my first recommendation would be that Lifeline 13, 11, 14, it was put in the chat earlier, they can give you advice. You don't have to be in crisis yourself to call that number. You can be ringing Lifeline to get advice on how to support someone. In my, I think, 7 or so years of working in suicide prevention, I've asked many, many people, "Are you okay?" And I've ensured to do it in a really genuine and authentic, caring way every time I do it. And in all that time, I've never had anyone who's been unhappy with me asking the question. I think we can feel like we're intruding in people's lives, or there's a bit of a fear about, oh, what if they get angry? But I've not come up against that. So I think that's a myth that we need to get rid of, because as long as you're doing it in a way that shows that you're really caring about them, that's what's important.
That's such great advice. Thank you so much. So yeah, delegate, everyone, if you're not sure what to do. We all have, ambassadors and champions and HR and people in culture in our workplaces, or we know who's friends with who. So great advice there, Seryn. Thank you so much. And the number for Lifeline is in the chat. Meret, I'm going to jump to you in a second, but I just want to take a moment while we have so many people on the call who I'm sure are really appreciating what everyone has to say. My lovely colleague Jill is going to post another link. If you would like to chip in to STEPtember, please feel free to support us, help offer services to young people with disabilities, early intervention treatment, youth programs. To give you an idea of that early intervention treatment cost, it's $200 a session. So if you've got a newborn baby and you want to provide the best opportunity for that child, thinking about having to provide 3 or 4 therapy sessions a week, very overwhelming. And that's where we come in and we take care of that burden, which has a huge impact on their mental health as well. CPA is a big family. We always call it that. So once you're in, you're in the, Meret knows this. She's been with us since you were, 9 months old, something like that. Please give what you can. I think if everyone chips in $5 today, we'll be well on our way to providing lots of children with the right support. So thank you so much, Jill, for popping that in there. So Meret, so many stories have been shared. Do you have any sort of thoughts that you want to share around like what Seryn has said, what George has shared, and how maybe you've experienced a similar thing as a person with cerebral palsy?
Sure. I've gotten a few experiences where that's aligned to what Seryn has said, and not so much an experience I've had personally, but I've had a couple of close family members go through significant health issues, and what they found makes a huge difference is having, I guess, their friends and family say, hey, I don't know what you're going through, but I'm here for you, rather than not saying anything. And so that's something that resonated with me when you were talking about that, Seryn. But I just think I go back to assumptions again, and just not making assumptions. Have a close friend who was living by themselves during COVID, and COVID lockdowns, and we were talking on the phone one night, and she said, I'm really lonely. I'm not sure what to do with myself. I don't really have anyone. And it just really surprised me that even some of the strongest people can go through things that, we're not aware of. And so that conversation really upset me, because really good friend, but it also made me pick up the phone more often and not be tardy with checking in. And I just think it's an awareness of that people go through all kinds of things, and to just not make assumptions that everything's always as they seem.
Yeah, and social media doesn't help us with that, right? Everyone's
No,
posting smiley
no.
pictures, and yeah, I think that's going back to YANA. That's why those platforms that share real life stories are so important. And yeah, thank you so much for sharing that, Meret. I think you touched on a really important point as well, which is sometimes the strongest people can also be affected by this, which just shows you, like mental health impacts everyone, every single person. Everyone has their own challenges and will have their own challenges throughout their lives. So it's not something that we need to be afraid of, or, it's not something we need to be ashamed of. I think there's still, even though we have these incredible campaigns like STEPtember and Are You OK Day, there's still this stigma and shame, like you might have done something wrong to experience these feelings and thoughts. And from my own personal experience, I can just say categorically that I'm sure Seryn will agree with me that that is not true. It can touch everyone, and you don't have to have done anything wrong. um, so speaking of campaigns, Georgia is in our wonderful campaign team. Georgia, why do you think campaigns like STEPtember and Are You OK are important, and how do you think maybe organisations and even individuals can integrate these conversations into their culture year round and not just on a dedicated day?
Yeah, very, very good question. Um, I think it's about awareness and advocacy any day of the year. And it's a funny thing actually, because I am someone who has struggled with my mental health, as we've established, over many years. And I remember having a funny feeling when it was Are You OK Day? And yeah, don't want to offend Seryn here, but I think they've done a great change with making it Are You OK Any Day? Because I remember having a feeling like I'm struggling with this every day. It felt a bit tokenistic sometimes to have one specific day where people are suddenly talking about it and it's suddenly okay to ask how you are doing or whatever it is. But I see it so much more than that now. And I suppose being in campaigns now and understanding it and actually seeing all the resources and amazing things that Are You OK have about, I guess, tips and things about how to look after your mental health, how to ask the questions. It's so much more about awareness and advocacy and having time to actually bring focus and attention and bring eyes onto the issues, because people are struggling with these things all year round. So I think it's, yeah, bringing that attention, it does unite people. Um, and I think to avoid, as you've said, making it tokenistic and bringing it into everyday life, I do have a few practical things for workplaces. I know we've got a lot of organizations on the call.
Fabulous.
So I'm going to share a few, and I'm happy to hear from Meret and Seryn if you've got any others to add afterwards as well. My first tip is to encourage face-to-face time, which I know is very tricky at the moment because everyone wants to work from home and it is nice to work from home, don't get me wrong. But I think being in the office, and maybe that's having joint days where your whole team comes in or whatever it is, means that you've got an opportunity to have incidental conversations. And I think those incidental interactions is where you get the truth and the honesty and have a really authentic, genuine conversation with someone. Because if I think about myself, something might not warrant a Teams message or a email to someone saying, I don't know, something's going on for me or whatever it is. But in the hallway or having a lunch together or whatever at work, in the office, a lot can come up. So I think that's really, really valuable. So encouraging a joint day, yeah, to be in the office together would be my first tip. Second one would be to incorporate check-ins into your regular meetings or regular whips. I don't know if you've got one-on-ones with your team or you've got group team meetings, but starting off the meeting with a check-in where maybe everyone goes around or you're just asking each other how you are, and actually having really genuine and honest responses to that. And that's the hard part, because we're all on autopilot when we ask, how are we or how are you? It's just good, thanks. How are you? Yeah, good, thanks. And then you're straight into it and you're into the nitty gritty. So I think really aiming to be honest with your response, and that comes from a manager's perspective as well. If you're with a staff member, whatever it is, which can feel quite vulnerable, but I think that's really important. And Seryn touched on it a little bit before, actually. where she said that she's not had a response, which neither have I, where someone has been angry or annoyed for being asked if they're okay. So I think the next one is to not require, I don't know what the right word is, instant gratification or an instant outcome or result from asking, are you okay? Because someone might not be ready to answer in that first instance when you've asked, but they might go off and reflect on it and actually think, you know what? Yeah, there was a reason that person asked me that. You know what? Actually, I'm not okay. Maybe I will do something about it or whatever. So I think it's always going to do more good than harm. And that's really important to remember if you are feeling nervous about asking the question. Um, it still just puts that seed into someone's head and it um, reminds them that you're a safe person to go to. So maybe later when they do feel more comfortable to open up, you're somebody that they know, oh, you know what, I could go back to them and open up about this. So they're my three
Very
ways just to
wonderful.
incorporate it into the workplace a little bit more.
Thank you so much, Georgia. And someone actually has posted in the chat earlier that it can often be easier to talk to a stranger or have a stranger reach out to you. So, and oftentimes, as I know, we don't, the people we work with aren't strangers, but they are sort of one step removed. So, yeah, because there is that sort of, fear of failing someone that you deeply care about if you don't know what to do. So, and again, I just want to highlight the fact that Lifeline is there. They're all strangers to you. So
Very
they're
true.
very easy to talk to. So that's wonderful advice. Thank you so much, Georgia.
That's all right. And dare I say, I'm so sorry just to interrupt you, is
No, please.
sometimes I think it can feel maybe unprofessional to offload onto someone, or it might feel like not the right forum to do so. So maybe that's as what you've said before, Ash, is talking to HR or someone else who you maybe don't know as well, who's not in your immediate team. If that does feel more comfortable to you, so you can be a bit removed from your direct space or whatever it is, then that's a great option as well.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you, Georgia. Seryn, did you have anything to add to those sort of workplace tips?
Georgia, I think you covered that perfectly. I just will add to your point earlier about are you okay being tokenistic? We come up against that so much, and I don't take offense because
I'm sorry.
No, I don't at all because it's so common and people talk about it as Yellow Cupcake Day. Like, what sort of a difference is it that, we bring in some yellow cupcakes? But what Gavin Larkin did when he created Are You OK in 2009, which was a stroke of genius, is he put the bright colour, the black words on the bright colour, and he got the conversation started. And we're on a journey with Are You OK? And every year we have a theme. And finally, we're at the theme that it is any day. And I think this is what people have been calling for. And we're so glad that Australia has come on this journey with us. So I absolutely note that you're not alone in those thoughts. And I'm so pleased to see how far Are You OK has come in the past 15 years.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much, Seryn. Well, I think, Meret, did you have any other thoughts you wanted to add or anything else you wanted to share with the group?
Just unmute myself. Yes, just I guess one thing I've become aware of, not so much aware of, but been reminded of in the last week or so is that I'm currently down working with Back-to-Back Theatre, which is a theatre company made up of actors with intellectual disabilities, and just being in rehearsals with them and taking our time to get things done and having a sense that there's no pressure. And I know that's really difficult in daily life and work, and there are always deadlines to meet. But I think it's important to step back and not rush and not feel external pressures to get things done if you're not feeling up to it. And it's something someone else reminded me of a couple of weeks ago, and I was saying to them, I'd like to do this and this and this. And they said, Meret, there's no rush. Just take your time. You don't have to have a script done in 3 months, or you can take however long you need it. So I just think reminding yourself and others that, you know, there's not always that rush to get things done.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Meret. That's a wonderful reminder that pressure can also bring out some of these, you know, mental health symptoms. So please just take the pressure off yourself. Take time, go for a walk, step up and check in, and enjoy the rest of your STEPtember. Again, there is a tile that Jill's posted if you want to scan. If you enjoyed today and you want to chip in, we'd love your support. And just a big round of applause. I know we're all virtually clapping for Seryn, Georgia, and Meret. Your stories have just honestly filled me with such, I don't know, joy. I know some of them are hard to hear, but it's really wonderful to hear how you're all sharing your stories so bravely and openly, and the impact that you're having on your community and your friends and everyone here today on the call. So thank you again, and thank you again everyone for joining us. Please continue to post in the chat, but we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. And yeah, have a wonderful STEPtember. Happy STEPtember, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Some
you.
wonderful messages in the chat here.
Thank
you,
Ashely.
Thank
Thank you.
Oh, it's so nice hearing everyone's all thank yous. Just feeling heard is important. We need to feel heard and understood as human beings.
There's some great comments in the chat, aren't there?
Yeah. So we'll just keep reading them out as everyone. Amy, thanks for all these stories. Have really opened my eyes to a very important topic. Such an authentic discussion. It was such an authentic discussion. Important conversation. Thank you for stepping up and checking in. Don't forget to follow YANA Club.
That's very sweet.
Really engaging and informative. Enjoy the rest of your day. Hopefully everyone has some yellow cupcakes as well. When you said yellow cupcakes, Sarah, and I was just instantly
I know, and it's not all about that, but that would be amazing right now.
It always helps. That's any day as well. That's not just today.
That's any day,
totally.
precisely.
Yeah, especially for me right now. Yeah. Highly recommend
absolutely.
it for any pregnant people.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm going to end the meeting now, but thank you so much. And yeah, we'll see you on the leaderboards, everyone. Bye.
Bye,
Thanks,
everyone.
guys.
Bye.
Bye.